You're an American GI stuck in a trench. There seems to be no way out as bullets fly above. But then, you hear a roar and a loud bang. The M4 Sherman. The definitive American tank that fought in every major front of World War II and beyond. So how did it become the most popular American tank of the time? What challenges did it face along the way? And did it really take 5 Shermans to kill 1 Tiger? Sherman's predecessor, the M3 Lee, entered service in late 1941. It was an interim design meant to quickly boost the firepower of American armoured units. Its main trait, the 75mm M2 gun, was located in a sponson in the tank's hull. It was better suited to soft targets than the British 2 and 6 pounder guns, and kept good performance against armour. Although the gun proved itself capable, the M3's design was flawed. A reasonable stopgap solution meant to fulfill the hungry appetite of a world war. But the Allies were far from done. In April of 1941, T6 was chosen as the simplest of all designs. Completed in September of 1941, it would go on to be designated as the M4 medium tank. Designed for duty and to face the Axis war machine head-on, the M4 was ready for battle. In February of 1942, the first M4A1 Shermans began rolling off the factory floor, and in October of the same year, they took part in the Second Battle of El Alamein. First variants shared many common elements with their predecessor, namely the engine, transmission and suspension. The M4 moved the combat-proven 75mm main gun, later upgraded to the long 76, to a 360-degree traversable turret, allowing for equal dispersion of fire on every side of the tank. 2.74 meters tall, or 9 feet if you prefer the Freedom units, and crewed by 5 instead of 6 in the Lee, with sufficient armour and decent mobility, the M4 was a textbook medium tank. In battle, the first drawbacks of Sherman tanks emerged, such as unfavourable placement of the ammunition in the crew compartment, which often caused fires and detonation in the case of penetration. This gave the M4 its most popular nickname, the Zippo and Ronson, both related to cigarette lighter brands. These issues were later resolved with the introduction of wet ammo racks, which were moved to the very bottom of the fighting compartment. Shermans fought in every major theatre of World War II and beyond, appearing in the sands of Tunisia, the snows of the USSR, the hedges of Normandy, and the jungles of Burma, as well as in Korea, Israel and Indonesia after the end of the war. With nearly 50,000 units produced, the Sherman has proved its worth. And with such a popular tank, myths are simply bound to appear. The most popular one states that 5 Shermans were needed to destroy a single Tiger. Nobody knows for sure how this myth was born. Some believe that it originates from the fact that an American tank platoon consisted of 5 tanks, which meant that German tanks never faced less than 5 Shermans at once in normal circumstances. Of course, German tanks aren't supposed to operate by themselves either, which makes it even stranger. Its appearances in pop culture, such as in the movie Fury starring Brad Pitt, only cemented its place in the common myth pool. Of course, depending on the variant, an M4 Sherman was more or less likely to successfully disable a Tiger tank in a duel, especially when it was armed with the longer 76mm M1 or a 76.2mm 17-pounder gun. Regardless, this myth is widely accepted to be untrue. In Warthunder, Shermans are a very common sight on the battlefield, appearing between 3.0 with the M4A3E2 and 6.3 with the M4A3E2 76W, with the overall count of 35 vehicles spanning across 10 tech trees. They vary greatly depending on the exact model, but in general they can be characterised by their decent mobility and good versatility. The first Sherman you're likely to meet is the M4A3E2. At the battle rating of 3.0, its armour is very effective at such a low BR, with almost no frontal weak spots and decent angled armour. This beast bears the gun unique to this particular tank, the 105mm M4 howitzer. Its high explosive anti-tank round deals moderate damage upon penetration, sometimes resulting in an immediate incapacitation of the enemy crew due to overpressure. Where this Sherman is lacking, however, is its gun handling. Howitzer ordnance typically depends on its chemical energy to cause damage, usually with explosives. This means that the howitzers don't need their shells to be fast, and as a result this tank suffers from poor muzzle velocity, only 380 meters per second with the heat round. This makes aiming at your targets much harder than with a dedicated anti-tank gun. M4A3E2 also suffers from very poor turret rotation speed of only 3.6 degrees a second stock, which makes it susceptible to flanking maneuvers. The best way to play it is at close range alongside your teammates. With quite a hefty reload of 10 seconds on an aced crew, especially compared to the pea shooters of early tiers, you'd want a buddy to cover you while you're at your most vulnerable. Maintain some distance to your enemies, just enough to make aiming easy. You won't regret it. The most common Shermans at early tiers are the ones with the short 75mm guns. They mainly differ in hull shapes, running gear, additional equipment, and some with turret armor. The main trait of most Sherman tanks is their excellent threat response time, greatly contributed to by short stop stabilizer, which makes it easier to fire on the move or to stop and quickly respond to enemy threats without having to wait for the gun to stop wobbling. Their main armament is the 75mm M3 cannon, which fires armor-piercing high-explosive M61 rounds. These are capable of dealing heavy post-penetration damage inside enemy tanks. It can also fire the subpar stock M79 armor-piercing round that should be replaced as fast as possible. M48 high-explosive rounds are useful against soft targets, and the M89 smoke shell for creating visual concealment. In some variants, the T45 APCR shells meant to be fired on heavier armor at the price of heavily reduced post-penetration damage. In general, armor of regular Shermans should not be relied on. It can, however, save you in some situations, usually when facing weaker enemies. A small patch on the right turret side caused by the horizontal drive mechanism on the early model 75 Shermans is a well-known weak spot that in some variants is covered with additional armor. The series begins with the M4A1, featuring a curved cast hull that offers decent protection only from fire coming directly from the front of the tank. Therefore, angling beyond a few degrees and without cover is not recommended. Unlike the later variants, this Sherman offers superior gun depression of -12 degrees instead of -10, which the rest offer. This makes playing hull down not only viable but also very effective. All this applies to the Sherman II, which is the M4A1 in British service, with additional access to both APCR and smoke rounds. The M4A1 75W and the M4 Hybrid feature a cast hull as well, with the M4A1 75W swapping the gun from the 76mm version of an M4A1 to the shorter 75, improving turret protection at the cost of 2 BR jumps. And the M4 Hybrid that features the M4A1 frontal glacis welded to the hull of a regular M4, making it identical gameplay-wise to the M4A1 at 3.7, albeit without the access to a smoke shell. Next up is the M4, featuring a sharp-edged, welded hull and applique armor added in front of the gunner's position and on the ammo racks. Despite the theoretical major improvement in terms of angling ability, this variant's hull armor is functionally very similar to the M4A1's, due to the driver's and machine gunner's viewports being separated from the main frontal armor plate, which results in poorer angles and in consequence, very easy weak spots to exploit by your enemies. M4A4 is very similar to the M4 with a slightly elongated hull to accommodate a bigger engine and a lack of roof-mounted M2HB 50 caliber machine gun, except for the Chinese premium. It can be found in the Chinese, Italian and French tech trees. At 4.0 you can find the M4A2 Sherman featuring an uninterrupted frontal plate sloped at 47 degrees, access to smoke grenades and APCR rounds, and an additional track armor on the hull and turret. The additional track armor allows for semi-effective angling against guns as powerful as the German PaK-40, which combined with a stabilizer makes it a very good brawler. The M4A2 can also be found in the German tree as the premium M4 748A. As a newest addition to the Sherman family as of this video, the premium Sherman III/4 can be found in the Swedish tech tree. It is by all means an M4A2 Sherman, albeit without the side applique armor, the top-mounted 50 cal, the hull-mounted gun, and smoke grenades. The long-barreled version of the Sherman medium tanks largely retain their versatility compared to their short-barreled counterparts. At their elevated battle ratings, their armor becomes largely useless against most guns at their respective battle ratings. They can be divided into 3 distinct categories by their primary ammunition: armor-piercing high explosive, and high explosive anti-tank. Starting off with armor-piercing, this category includes Shermans armed with the British 17-pounder guns and the French Long 75 guns. They are characterized by their excellent penetration capabilities, good ballistics, and decent post-penetration damage, especially considering the rounds they rely on are strictly solid shot. These versions, however, lack the short-stop stabilizer present on the American variants, limiting their effectiveness in close quarters and during fast-paced combat, lowering them to the standards of their usual enemies. As such, these versions are best suited for sniping and support roles, helping your team with dispatching of tough targets and watching over long sight lines. The British Sherman Fireflies, sitting on the chassis of the M4 and M4A4, are identical in terms of gameplay and tactics. They feature the British modified early Sherman turret, fitted for usage with their 76.2mm quick-fire 17-pounder anti-tank cannon. This setup greatly reduces the gun depression angle, slicing it in half compared to the 75mm models, from 10 degrees to -5 degrees. This makes choosing the right terrain very important for maintaining uninterrupted fire. It is worth noting that Fireflies come with smoke grenades, which helps in getting out of heated situations. The Italian tree also has 2 variants of the Firefly. The M4 Tipo IC is just an M4 hybrid with the Firefly turret, and it plays the same as the British versions. The Sherman 5C, however, has a very interesting advantage. At the cost of a 0.3 battle rating jump, this Firefly is the only one to get access to the Shot SV Mark I armor-piercing discarding sabot round, making it extremely capable of penetrating even the thickest armor you're likely to face. With improved ballistics, it makes sniping even easier, and since you don't have to aim for weak spots, the only place you need to aim at are the positions of the crew and ammunition. This of course comes at the cost of severely reduced post-penetration damage, therefore it is recommended to use it only when your regular APC-BC can encounter troubles. The 2 French upgraded Shermans feature the same long 75 SA50 L57 cannon, well known for its appearance on the AMX-13 light tanks. The gun works very similarly to the British 17-pounder, with a slightly higher muzzle velocity and a better top round, the PCOT 51P, capable of piercing 200mm of RHA. M4A4 SA50 is very similar to the Firefly series. It lacks the usual roof 50 cal, making it more problematic to deal with lightly armoured vehicles, but it more than makes up for it with the -10 degrees of gun depression, which allows it to make use of terrain a whole lot more than the Fireflies. M4A1 FL10 is an interesting cross between the hull of an M4A1 and the oscillating turret of an AMX-13. Thanks to this change, its reload only lasts 5 seconds, and it doesn't have to be improved by crew skills, thanks to its autoloader. This makes it easy to follow up a shot on your enemy before they can properly react, and coupled with smoke grenades, this tank is almost ideal for sniping. The autoloader holds 12 rounds, and when all of them are gone, you need to withdraw and wait for them to be replenished from the second stage ammo rack, or from a friendly capture point. Next up, we have the APHE Shermans. These are the direct American upgrade over the 75s. All of the American 76mm variants also retain the stabilizer, helping maintain their good brawling ability. Similarly to the earlier models, they come with a not so good solid shot AP round that should be replaced as soon as possible. The main 76mm M62 armor-piercing high-explosive shell is a decent, universal round for the tier. It requires aiming at weak spots, and in some cases switching to APCR if necessary. Because of their exceptional high profile, it is harder than usual to stay undetected. The gun depression of -10 degrees allows playing hull down and using rough terrain to your advantage. They retain the versatility of their lower BR brethren, as in most engagements they have some kind of advantage over the enemy, just as a medium tank should. M4A1 76W is the first in line at 4.7. It is also the first to introduce wet ammo stowage, slightly aiding its survivability thanks to moving all of the ammunition to the bottom of the fighting compartment. This, however, doesn't help much, as even with the additional track armor, everything this tank can face is capable of going through the armor, even from the front. Thanks to this, it is in your best interest to make yourself harder to hit by constantly being on the move, and thanks to its stabilizer, you can maintain semi-accurate fire while doing so. The M4A2 72W switches out the curved cast hull to a fully welded one of the already familiar M4A2, improving mobility. Otherwise, very similar in playstyle. This model at 5.3 faces even tougher enemies, forcing more careful positioning. This tank is also present as a premium in the Soviet tech tree. The M4A376W, commonly referred to as the M4A3E8 or Easy 8, is perhaps the most recognizable variant of the Sherman. It again replaces the hull for the newer M4A3 type and gets access to the M93 APCR round, useful when fighting tough enemies head on. Even at 5.7, this tank is very capable if played suitably. This tank is also present in the Japanese tech tree. The M4T26 or the Shershing is a combination of a Sherman hull coupled with a Pershing turret. It is a direct firepower upgrade over the 76mm variants, as the M26 Pershing features a 90mm gun. It allows the Sherman to fight more armoured enemy units at the cost of an even taller silhouette, the lack of a stabilizer, and sub-caliber M304 rounds that are featured on the M26. Finally, there are the Heat Shermans, in the form of the M51 and the M51W. These are the latest Israeli modifications that replace the 76mm M1 guns for the 105 M51 cannon, on the hulls of the M4A1 76W HVSS and the M4A3 76W HVSS respectively, with the former receiving the engine from the latter. The new armament's main round is a heat shell capable of piercing 400mm of armor, eliminating any need to aim for a weak spot at its battle rating. At the cost of severely limited post-penetration, only in front of the heat jet. The playstyle should be kept similar to the Fireflies: keep your distance, support friendlies, dispatch tough targets. There are a couple of unusual Sherman variants currently in game which offer significantly different gameplay from the usual types. The first is the legendary M4A3E2 Jumbo and its upgraded version, the M4A3E2 76W. This medium-turned heavy tank is an up-armoured version of the M4A3, receiving an additional 38mm armour plate on top of its 63mm one, a thickened lower front portion of the hull, and a new much thicker turret. As a result, its armour is a serious challenge for a range of guns at its battle rating. The only frontal weak spot is the bow machine gun, which should be covered by decorators or otherwise hidden whenever possible. Angling beyond a few degrees, however, is not advised, as the thin track armour of only 38mm is the perfect weak spot for high velocity guns that the Jumbo can meet. The M4A3E2 is a very good assault tank at 5.3. Despite the seemingly outdated 75mm gun for the tier, the gun handling is good enough to disable and flank an enemy tank, if a regular killing shot is not possible. Very few guns can go through the Jumbo's frontal armour at 5.3, the most dangerous being the German Long 88 and the Soviet 122 and 152mm guns. Aggressive playstyle suits this tank well. The M4A3E2 76W gets the long 76mm gun in exchange for a whole BR jump. This makes facing enemies easily capable of going through your defences much more common, and as such, this jumbo is more situational than its shorter brother. The T-34 Calliope is the M4 Sherman with an 80-round 114mm rocket launcher strapped to its roof. The launcher is bound directly to the cannon, therefore aiming with the rockets requires getting off target with the main gun. The M8 rockets with the high explosive warheads are only effective against light vehicles and the roofs of medium tanks. The launcher is also very vulnerable to enemy fire, as it is possible to blow it up with a simple APHE round or an artillery strike. It is best to dispose of your rockets as quickly as possible in the direction of the closest light vehicle in the hopes of a quick kill, and then proceeding to use it as a regular M4, featuring the giant bullet magnet on the roof. Finally, the Skink SPAAG, based on the Grizzly 1 medium tank, is the Canadian-built version of the M4A1 Sherman. This anti-air vehicle is quite special, as it provides all-around protection for the crew, instead of being open-topped like most vehicles of the type. With 25mm of armour on the turret and front hull roof, it can only be destroyed by bombs and direct hits with rockets and heavy cannons. In return, the Skink offers a barrage of 4 20mm Polston guns, functionally similar to the Oerlikon cannons found on other British SPAAGs. These guns, however, are known for their low rate of fire and low tracer content compared to similar autocannons. Effective or not against aircraft, this vehicle is not very good at fighting tanks, and its APT belt only offers 42mm of penetration. Therefore, the Skink should stick to destroying enemy planes. No giant cannon, no unstoppable armor, no record speeds. This tank didn't seem very good, and yet it was just what was needed. The universal box with a gun, always there to aid in battle. It was no miracle of engineering, nor was it a wonder weapon, but it simply didn't have to be. It was good enough to fight, and it was good enough to win. The M4 Sherman, War Hero, Metal Beast, Hell on Wheels. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Commander Tyrael, out.